closed-door session with the governor of the state. Mr. Obi dismissed the claim as false, saying the over 100 million people living below the poverty line are his strong structure. On his part, Governor Samuel Otom says Mr. Obi possesses an impeccable credential fit for the highest office in the land.
For me, it's just a courtesy call on somebody I consider a brother and the governor of Benue State. It's just a courtesy call, private courtesy call. I've said it before when people talk about structure, that my structure are the 100 million Nigerians living in poverty, 35 million young people employed, those people who are finding it difficult to live, the people. Nigerians are today spending over 100% of their money on feeding. That are my structures. And above all, I have the most important structure, the Almighty God.
First of all, to welcome my brother, Mr. Peter Obi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party, and to commend him for paying this courtesy call, and also to formally let me know of his intention to contest the presidency in 2023. I commend him, and where we are today, I've always said we must look beyond politics, and we must work towards a joint working together to ensure that we rescue Nigeria and rebuild it. And I think that Peter Obi's credentials are very clear, and everybody knows. But I appreciate him. He knows that I am a very big stakeholder in PDP, but he found time to visit me, and he's been going around. And so this is commendable, and I appreciate him. And like I always say, John 3:27, a man can receive nothing except is given to him from above. So if God decides that it is him, nobody can stop it. If God decides that it is somebody else, nobody can also stop it. So this is a very welcome development, and I believe that he will reach out to even the other presidential candidates of various political parties in the PDP, in the APC, and NNPP. I believe that he should be able to reach out to them, to sit down with them, analyze the Nigerian situation, and see if he can convince them to even step down for him, because there is provision. If they do that, that can work. So, but let us be seen as putting Nigeria first. That is what is most important. And I think so far, I commend his effort, and I welcome him and appreciate him for paying this visit. And God bless him.
The 2023
what this country has.
Conversation with Arise News. We're talking with the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. And in the course of this conversation, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar will be interested in your vision, in your mission, what plans exactly that you have for Nigerians. I'm Ruben Abati.
I'm Tundu Abiola.
You're welcome.
Well, so let's kickstart the conversation by asking you about how you feel being a veteran, some people will say perpetual, presidential aspirant, candidate, and you've been in this business, since 1992. And here again, for 2023, you are the presidential standard bearer for the PDP. How do you feel this time, and what gives you the confidence that this time around you will succeed?
Thank you, Ruben, for this question. But maybe I may have to take you back to my political journey or political history. If you recall, even when I was trying to run, to be the governor of my state, from old Gongola state up to, present-day Adamawa state, I ran 4 times before eventually I was elected as a governor, and then never served to become a vice president. And basically is, I am driven by passion and the desire to give back to this country or to my society what this country has done for me. Because if I were to be born around this time, I don't think I would have been that fortunate, that lucky to become what I have become today. So I am more or less driven by the passion to give back to the society what this society or this country has done so much for me. So basically, this is it. So it is not a new thing, either in politics or even in history. We have several leaders all over the world who have made attempts to serve their country. One of the greatest presidents, in the American history is Abraham Lincoln. He was somebody who ran up to 5-6 times before becoming the president of the United States. At this my age and what I have been able to accomplish, I don't think I desire anything more than the passion, to serve, my country and my fellow countrymen and women. So this is what is the driving force behind my persistent desire, to serve my country and its people.
Some within even your party struggle to accept the idea of another northern president after what will be 8 years of a northern presidency under President Muhammadu Buhari. And this has found new expression, this resentment, when it was perceived that you rejected Governor Wike as your running mate, given that he's one of the bright hopes in the PDP. So why did you choose Governor Okowa as your running mate over Governor Wike? And how do you plan to unify your party so that Governor Wike and his supporters get behind your candidacy?
Abiola, I also want you to recollect that I have contested this presidency a couple of times. And anytime I lost, I did not try to blame anybody. I would first of all carry my grievances through the court law, to the Supreme Court. Whatever the Supreme Court decides, I accept. And then I move on and I plan for the future. So first and foremost, I don't think that Governor Wike was not rejected. Nobody was rejected in the party. But the point is that you must understand it is the prerogative of the candidate to pick his running mate, a running mate that he believes he can work with amicably and then also deliver, the policies of the party and also try to unify the country. If you can go through history, I was given a ticket in 2007. I picked a Southeastern, an Igbo. I was given a ticket in 2019. I picked an Igbo. And in 2022, I'm given a ticket, and I picked an Igbo man again. Consecutively, this is just to show you my desire to unify the country. So I don't think Governor Wike is a brilliant politician, is courageous, is tenacious, I believe he has a future in this, in the political, evolution of this country. So it is not that, it's not a question of rejection, certainly not. I think it's too harsh a word to say that, we rejected Governor Wike, certainly not.
Okay, I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Since Governor Wike and some of his supporters, other governors, started protesting that you should have chosen him because that was the decision that was taken by a group that was put together by the party with your consent to choose the running mate. And we were told by Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State that Wike was a choice of about 13 persons out of 17, but then that you jettisoned the report of that committee. And on Arise TV, for a second time, Governor Samuel Ortom has said, well, he is praying to God to determine who he will support. But that if you reach out to Governor Wike, as some people have suggested, and you try to make peace with him, that he will have no problems. So, okay, we would like to know, how far have you gone in trying to reach out to Wike? And are you doing that, if at all you are doing that, out of belief that he is relevant to your ticket, or you just do that to fulfill all righteousness? So do you think it's relevant or is inconsequential to what is on the ticket?
First and foremost, let me put the records straight. The committee that was set up at my own instance deliberated. There was no vote, and they recommended 3 names because they knew that it was my prerogative to pick any one of the 3. So there was actually no vote. It's not true. Governor Ortom himself chaired that committee. He knew that there was no vote taken. And I have the report of that committee. And the committee said, we are recommending the following. And they recommended 3 people. And out of the 3 people, I picked one. I did not go out of that recommendation. So I think people should be fair to me and should also state the facts. That's one aspect of it. We are reaching out to Governor Wike and we are talking with him. And I believe very soon we will find, reconciliation. In fact, very soon, because we are talking to him and talking to his colleagues, governor colleagues. And I am very, very optimistic, we are going to resolve our internal crisis and move on.
So are you saying that Governor Samuel Ortom lied to the public?
But what he gave was inaccurate. I can give you a copy of the report that was sent to me. There was no vote in there. There was no records of any vote. Absolutely not.
Right, you expressed your consistent preference for running mates from the Southeast, but the agitation initially was that the presidency would be microzoned to the Southeast.
No.
Which?
It's not correct. That's not PDP. There was nothing like that in PDP.
Right.
Absolutely not.
But you are aware that there was a general agitation. That
agitation is different from a decision to microzone. PDP has never sat down as a party to microzone any position. Yes, we have said there should be a rotation between North and South as far as the presidency and also key officers of the party as well as government is concerned. I mean, we started it. We brought that into our constitution, not any other party. Any other party else is just following what we initiated. So we have never microzoned any position to any part of this country. It has always been between North and South.
Right.
Of course, there has been agitations from the Southeast, because since the return of democracy, they have not produced a president, neither did they produce a vice president. That is of course, quite legitimate. But in politics, you negotiate power. You negotiate power through negotiations, not through cohesion, not through force. I mean, that's why it is called politics.
Has reacted to the notion that his presidential ambition might just be dead on arrival for his lack of political structure. Speaking in Makurdi, the Benue state capital, after a closed-door session with the governor of the state, Mr. Obi dismissed the claim as false, saying the over 100 million people living below the poverty line are his strong structure. On his part, Governor Samuel Otom says Mr. Obi possesses an impeccable credential fit for the highest office in the land.
For me, it's just a courtesy call on somebody I consider a brother and the governor of Benue State. It's just a courtesy call, private courtesy call. I've said it before when people talk about structure. Now, my structure are the 100 million Nigerians living in poverty, 35 million young people unemployed, those people who are finding it difficult to live, the people. Nigerians are today spending over 100% of their money on feeding. That are my structures. And above all, I have the most important structure, the Almighty God.
So the negotiations from the Southeast were not successful this time. Your erstwhile running mate, Peter Obi, left the PDP and joined another party, is also running for president. How do you think this will affect your prospects, given that the Southeast has always been such a safe zone for the PDP?
I really don't expect, the Labour Party to, to take as much votes from the PDP as people are suggesting. We could have seen it in the last elections in Osun State. What is the performance of the Labour Party? This is a party that doesn't have a governor, doesn't have members of the National Assembly, doesn't have state assembly members, and politics in this country depends on the structures you have at these various levels, at the local government level, at the state level, and at the national level. So it is very, very difficult to expect a miracle to happen, simply because Peter Obi is in the Labour Party.
Well, two quick follow-up questions. The first one is...
After all, they were saying through the social media they had more than 1 million votes in Osun State. But how many votes turned out to vote for Labour Party? And then again, mark you...
Obi left the PDP and joined another party, is also running for president.
Neither did they produce a vice president. That is of course, quite legitimate. But in politics, you negotiate power. You negotiate power through negotiations, not through cohesion, not through force. That's why it is called politics.
So the negotiations from the Southeast were not successful this time. Your erstwhile running mate, Peter Obi, left the PDP and joined another party, is also running for president. How do you think this will affect your prospects, given that the Southeast has always been such a safe zone for the PDP?
I really don't expect, the Labour Party to, to take as much votes from the PDP as people are suggesting. We could have seen it in the last elections in Osun State. What is the performance of the Labour Party? This is a party that doesn't have a governor, doesn't have members of the National Assembly, doesn't have state assembly members, and politics in this country depends on the structures you have at these various levels, at the local government level, at the state level, and at the national level. So it is very, very difficult to expect a miracle to happen, simply because Peter Obi is in the Labour Party.
Well, two quick follow-up questions. The first one is...
After all, they were saying through the social media they had more than 1 million votes in Osun State. But how many votes turned out to vote for Labour Party? And then again, mark you, you are talking about social media. In the North, 90% of our people are not tuned to social media.
Well, I was going to ask two quick follow-up questions on this issue of zoning and rotation. Now, the former governor of Ekiti State, Peter Ayo, one of the reasons he put up as his own grievance is that Section 3C of the PDP constitution is very clear about rotation, about zoning. So to people who argue that, they think that the PDP jettisoned its own constitution. That's part of Section 3 that I've quoted, by choosing the presidential candidate from the North, being your good self. So that's their grievance. Now, second follow-up question is that with regard to this, a group or several groups within the PDP are also saying that the chairman of the party, Senator Yochi, should step down. That is a matter of honor because he made the promise that he will step down if the candidate comes from the North. Now we have the candidate, your good self, from the North. We have the chairman of the party, also from the North. We have the chairman of the board of trustees, also from the North. So your party members are saying, no, we want fairness. We want justice in the distribution of positions. But you seem to have defended Senator Yochi, you staying on when you spoke at the rally in Oshubu ahead of the governorship election.
You see, this position we have found ourselves is not the first time PDP has found itself. But there is a difference. If the elected president is from the North and the party chairman happens also to be from the North, automatically the party chairmanship reverts to the South. So Ayoshe is reading the provision of Section 3 of our Constitution upside down. We had had it before. We have gone through this before. This is not the first time. When the president and the party chairman happen to be from the same zone, automatically, the chairman reverts to the other zone of the country. So that's incorrect. And the second part of your question was
about Senator Yochi stepping down.
The step is he will definitely, if today I'm elected the president, automatically Senator Ayo steps down. In fact, we had a meeting of the Northern Zone, all the stakeholders, on the issue of Senator Ayo and also the chairman of Board of Trustees. And we all agreed that if the president is elected from the North, both positions will also revert. And then I think there is also a general misunderstanding. PDP is different from APC. Of course, APC copied some of the things because we are an older party. But they now lump us together. So, and now said, okay, since Buhari is from the North, so even PDP itself, forgetting that in all the PDP administration, the South had the highest number of years when the PDP was in office. So I think we need to separate these two so that we can be very rational in our arguments. But I think also I would like to blame the media for not trying to differentiate between these two issues.
Right, I have 3 questions for you, 2 about APC and 1 about Nigeria in general. So since we've talked about Labour Party, we'll talk about APC. What is your assessment of your prospects now that the APC running mate, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, has chosen somebody from the Northeast in Senator Kashim Shettima? You're also from the Northeast, hence the question. Secondly, what is your view of a Muslim-Muslim ticket and its viability in a time such as this? And thirdly, the disunity that we find ourselves in as a nation. What are your thoughts on that? How did we get here as a country? And what will you do to heal these wounds?
We go to that through APC now. We go to that through APC. My fundamental disagreement with Asiwaju since 2007 was on the issue of Muslim-Muslim ticket. That was my fundamental disagreement and departure politically from Asiwaju. Remember, I came out out of PDP on the issue of zoning. And together with Asiwaju, we formed ACN. And I was given a ticket in Lagos. And he insisted to be my running mate. And I said, no, I'm not going to have a Muslim ticket. And because of that, he switched his support to the late Umaru Yar'Adua. That was the parting point. And of course, it is also a fact that when Buhari emerged in 2015 in Lagos, I opposed a Muslim ticket. I opposed it. And my opposition actually reinforced the decision of President Buhari to pick, a Christian running mate. So I have all along opposed that. I don't believe in that. I don't believe it's right for a country, like Nigeria, a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country. There should be balancing of, interests, whether religious or otherwise. And then what was your other point?
Your assessment of your prospects in the Northeast, because the APC running mate comes from the Northeast.
Well, certainly my prospects are much higher. I think it's an unfair question to ask me because I know that my prospects are much higher. I mean, if you know the composition of the Northeast, you have Borno and Yobe. These are essentially two Kanuri states. And then you have the other states, which are essentially Hausa Fulani states. So even if people are going to vote on that basis, I think I have a more favorable, this thing from the Northeast.
Okay, I was going to ask you about something else, but let me start with Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, since you mentioned his name. Yes, in 2007, the two of you were together in the Action Congress of Nigeria. I mean, publicly, the two of you are friends. So how do you feel running against a man who is considered as your ally? Because people are already saying, well, there isn't much difference between the two of them. They are friends. They are like minds. So whoever wins between the two of them is same of the same. But the question I actually wanted to ask is about Ruga and your opposition.
What?
To Ruga, your opposition to anti-open grazing law in some of the states or in all the states. In 2019, ahead of the election, you complained that this is a violation of the rights of the Hausa Fulani or herdsmen to live anywhere, to enjoy the freedom of movement. Now you want to unify the country. And that was a major issue ahead of the 2019 election. Have you had cause to change your position?
First of all, grazing or no grazing is not a federal issue. It's a state or regional issue. I have more than 1,000 heads of cattle. They have never gone beyond Adamawa State. So as far as I'm concerned, it is a regional or state issue. This is the facts of the case. So states are at liberty to take whatever measures in terms of law, either for or anti-grazing, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think the Federation should have anything to do with it. And I believe that was even what used to happen even in the First Republic. Yes, in the First Republic, there was a grazing this thing in the northern region because we used to have grazing reserves there in the northern region. But then the region became, split into states. And it is therefore the responsibility of the states. It's a concurrent issue even in our constitution. I don't think we should try to bring about, either legislation or changes at the national level.
How about you and Asiwaju Bola Tinubu being same of the same?
We are still friends. Of course, that doesn't mean that we will not have political differences. We have been having political differences ever since we became friends. Nothing unusual about that.
Okay, you are determined to beat him at the polls.
Of course, I'm sure.
Well, insecurity is another big concern in the country right now. How do you plan to address the violent attacks and kidnappings being perpetrated by Islamic extremists like Boko Haram and ISWAP? And then in the southeast, you have secessionist agitation, you have those enforcing stay-at-home orders every Monday and just causing complete mayhem.
I think first and foremost, you have to give every part of this country a sense of belonging, because there have been exclusion, to some parts, of this country. Like, I think 2 nights ago, I was arguing before a very, very top government official. I said, how come, which is a common knowledge to most of the media houses, we have 17 security outfits in this country, and all of them being headed, by one section of the country. That's a very, very serious imbalance. So how are you now going to expect, people not to protest or to rise? And then, of course, secondly, there is insufficient number of law enforcement agencies or agents on the streets. There is insufficient number of policemen on the streets. I give you example. Egypt has a population of about 80 million. They have more than 2 million policemen on the streets. Here we are, Nigeria, we have over 200 million people, population, and less than 300,000 policemen on the streets. The numbers cannot done. So there has to be a massive recruitment of Nigerians into the police, not only massive recruitment, but training and equipping. And then there has to be, every part of this country has to be given a sense of belonging. And I'm also a supporter for, state police. In the United States, they have about 3-4 levels of police. From state police to county police to borough police to city police, all types of police are there. We need to review that in our constitution and make sure that we provide for levels of police men, at the various parts of the states or the country. When I was growing up, we had a local police, and we had only maybe 2 or 3 or 5 of them in my locality, and there was law and order. But here we are with the Nigeria police, and this same police, you recall, have been deployed, or our own security services have been deployed in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in other parts of West Africa, and even in other parts of the world. But because they were fully equipped and well trained by the international organizations, they perform extremely well. So, first of all, there should be a decentralization of the police. And then, of course, there must be an increase in the number of policemen on the streets. And then thirdly, they must be well trained and well equipped to deal with our security challenges. It's something we can do.
Well, let's talk about your manifesto. Looks like the subject of removal of subsidies conspicuously absent in that manifesto. Is this an oversight? Even if it is not?
It's not an oversight, but I thought Nigerians have now come to accept my position on the issue, of subsidy removal. Recall that when I was vice president, we had designed subsidy removal in 4 stages. And I was the chairman of subsidy removal committee. At that time, I worked very, very closely with former Governor Adams Oshimole, who was then president of the NLC. And we removed subsidy phase 1, phase 2. And by phase 2, by the time we finished phase 2, we had left office. We expected the next PDP government and the late Umaru Yar'Adua to continue with the phase 2 and phase 3. That would have ended the issue of subsidy. But unfortunately, the policy got stuck. For one reason or the other, I don't know, because I had left the government. So I think it is inevitable that it has to happen, but it has also to be accompanied. And if you recall, what we did in phase 1 and phase 2. The NLC made demands on the issue of transportation, on the issue of allowances, increase in wages, which we all met. And then we removed phase 1 and phase 2. So I believe through negotiations again with the organized labor and also other sectors of the economy, that policy should resume and be completed.
So let's talk some more about your economic agenda outlined in your manifesto, My Covenant with Nigerians.
Yes.
How exactly do you plan to break government monopoly of infrastructure sectors, which you mentioned in your manifesto, to give private investors a larger role? And also you refer to the current interventionist management of our exchange rate. What would you plan to do differently? What are you promising Nigerians with regards to our exchange rate?
But I will support exchange rate is a central CBN's policy. I am not expected, to interfere as such. But what I expect to see is that I expect to see a convergence, of the CBN exchange rate and as well as the parallel market. This is what I expect to see because, I am a market-oriented, person. I believe in the forces of the market. So this is what I expect the CBN to achieve, a convergence of the exchange rate.
And what about government monopoly in infrastructure sectors?
You have to, we had started it. Most of the reforms, were initiated by me as chairman of the Privatization Council. The telecoms reform, the oil sector reform, the pension reform, and so on and so forth. All these reforms were reforms that we initiated, and some of them we accomplished during our own administration. And what we intend to do is to continue with the reforms, the various sectors of the economy, whereby we can give the private sector more say as far as, building, let's say, of more rail lines are concerned to link various parts of the country, building more roads. You can give them tax incentives until they recover their investment and made some interest in it. Otherwise, where are you going to get the money from to do it if you don't encourage the private sector to come in?
Well, sir, yesterday the national grid of Nigeria collapsed up to the point of zero output, the 6th time this year. And on your Twitter account, you tweeted that this is one collapse too many. It is the 6th time this is happening this year alone.
Yes.
That's part of your tweet. But there was an immediate rebuttal by Omoyele Sowore, who is also a presidential candidate in this race. And this is what he said. He said the national electrical grid collapse started when you and Obasanjo invested $16 billion to procure darkness for Nigeria. The Buhari regime came to gazette grid collapse as a law. Alhaji Atiku, don't pretend that you care about the national grid. We can't continue like this. That's another presidential candidate. What do you say to this allegation?
Well, he is my opponent. What do you expect him to say? He has all along lived outside this country. He doesn't even know the policy implementation or even the policy initiative. We started to, when we came in, the total generation was about 4,000 megawatts. We initiated the building of 9 additional power stations. 9. And by the time those 9 were finished, the capacity has gone up from 4 to about 13,000 megawatts. Unfortunately, no correspondent increase as far as the transmission lines are concerned. There is no way when your transmission lines cannot evacuate the power you are producing that they will not collapse. So they keep on collapsing. And these additional 9 power stations were completed by Jonathan Umaru, who was on it. He died and Jonathan continued and he completed them. So that's why any time there is an increase in the power generation, and then you have a transmission system that cannot evacuate the power, there will be a collapse. So he doesn't even know, because he lives outside this country. He comes every 4 years and contests for the presidency and goes back. He fails and goes back again. So what does Showore know about this country? Nothing, absolutely nothing.
But what do you intend to do differently if you were to become president of Nigeria?
Let me just give you a story, what I tried to do even during our own administration. I went to the president, I said, look, Mr. President, let us decentralize both generation and transmission. He said, what the hell do you mean? I said, look, let's use various other sources of power. Hydro, solar, even coal. We're still a developing country. And then break, the concentration. And the president said, no, he believed more in gas. I said, gas is going to be a problem for us because gas is only available in one location. And then it will take us longer time to have a gas plant that will supply the whole of this country electricity. And by the time you do that, you will find that the electricity you'll be generating is too heavy for our transmission. But if you decentralize the generation like in my zone, the Northeast, we have too many dams, they are lying idle. All what we need to do is install turbines. And then with our current transmission system, we can transmit the electricity. If you go to the Northwest, they also have too many large dams idling. All what you need to do is install, distant turbines, and they generate electricity. If you go to the South, then you can use whatever form of energy is available, whether it is gas or hydro or even coal. After all, Mr. President, I said the entire eastern region was being supplied by by coal from Enugu at that time. So what is wrong? But unfortunately, we had a divergence or disagreement as far as that issue was concerned. And he said we must go on gas. And that was how we started, the gas generating plants, additional 9. So I still believe it is something as a country we can consider to diversify our generation so that even with our current transmission lines, we can deliver, power to households and to everybody. It's a question of reviewing the policy.
Sir, you've described the unveiling of NNPC Limited as a step in the right direction. What exactly is your vision for NNPC?
My vision with NNPC was the kind of vision we have with the LNG. In other words, privatizing substantially, NNPC to the private sector in the stock market, so that whereby as many Nigerians as possible, as many people, also even abroad, can acquire shares. This will improve, first of all, transparency, efficiency, and also root out corruption, and then also increase the profitability and sustainability of the sector. Yes, the government has announced that it is started privatizing the NNPC, but a lot needs to be done because it appears that it is being done secretly. In other words, nobody, Nigerians and other members of the international community, have not seen it in a transparent manner. If you ask me honestly, I do not know how it's being done and by whom and what's the scope of the privatization how much is being privatized and how much is being retained by the government. I recall when we were in office, I invited some oil chief executives, multinational, and asked for their advice. How do we raise, cash for the government? They said, look, Mr. Vice President, even if you sell at that time, not today, if you sell maybe even about 10% stake of NNPC to the international community, you are going to get maybe about 35, 40 billion US dollars. And with that money, you can build all the roads, all the railway stations, all the ports, all the infrastructure that you needed to do. And you would have also increased the efficiency and integrity of the oil company. And I, of course, made that proposal, to the president then. And then, of course, that was not, accepted. So I believe, just like the Saudi Aramco has done and raised so much money for Saudi Arabia, which they are using to invest in their 2030 program, that is the kind of thing that I expected to see unveiled. But that's not what we are seeing. We are seeing a very secretive transaction being conducted by the government, and I don't see any element of transparency there. We have seen the transparency that accompanied the Saudi Aramco partial privatization. We have seen how much money was raised and so on and so forth. We are yet to see, our own. Maybe we haven't got to that stage, I don't know.
Well, if we may stay with the subject of NNPC commercialization a little bit more, I'm surprised you say that the process has been secretive, because the group CEO of the new company, NNPC Limited, in all the statements he has made so far, he's talked about transparency. In fact, he says NNPC is no longer transparent. It will be naked, and that accountability will be the watchword. But you say it's an incomplete process. So if you become president of Nigeria, obviously it will be one of the things you will need to deal with. So what will you do differently in terms of reform in the oil and gas sector? Second issue with this NNPC is a concern of the state governors. The NNPC is saying it's no longer going to be making returns to any federal allocation accounts committee, that it will not determine subsidy. It's just a business interested in profit and loss paying to shareholders. But the board, as it is now, where would the interest of the governors come in? Because these governors, these state governments, they depend on FAC allocation on a monthly basis. Do you think that their interest is covered or not?
Well, I must be honest with you. I'm as blank. Because other than the announcements, being made by the chief executive of the NNPC or whoever, I have not seen, in actual fact, the state governments or the oil producing areas being taken into account into the process that is currently going on. I have not seen, and I have not heard.
So if you become president, will you reverse what has been done?
I am not going to reverse, but rather I am going to open it up. In other words, whoever has a stake will be part of this process. Whoever has a stake, for whether oil producing areas, whether states or whatever, should participate in this process and so on and so forth. I don't see that happening at the moment. I only read announcements from the NNPC, that's all.
Well, we also have in this country challenges with oil theft and vandalism. How would you address these and just reform the oil and gas sector if given a chance?
Again, this is a task that you must bring in the security agencies, from the naval forces to all the security agencies that have been set up. I understand, for the securing, of our oil installations and oil infrastructure. I think everybody is left to do whatever he or she likes without coordination, and also without supervision and without leadership.
Well, like this administration, you've also been quoted as promising that you will lift about 10 million people annually out of poverty. And when Nigerians hear that, they say, oh, this is the same old story with all the GDP issues that we have. How do you intend to go about that, lifting people out of poverty and increasing the country's GDP?
Oil only maybe accounts for about 20% of our GDP. The bulk of our GDP is non-oil. Basically, you must pay attention to agriculture. Both North and South, agriculture is the mainstay of the economy. You have to promote industrialization and manufacturing. So if you do that, you are going to raise as many millions of jobs as possible. Agriculture, manufacturing, industrialization.
Right. You just mentioned Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia, which is unfolding before our eyes. How do you envisage Nigeria without crude oil and Nigeria with a diversified economy?
First of all, you have to use the crude oil revenue to help diversify your economy, because this is what they are doing.
Yes.
Yes.
But the time will come when the last drop of crude oil.
Of course. Sure. But by the time the last drop of crude is gone, you would have diversified the economy.
So
you would have diversified your agriculture, your manufacturing, your industrialization, and so on and so forth.
Okay, let's talk education and health. What's your vision for developing the education sector? And health has also become very important. And some of your critics say, what is this attraction with Dubai? It's like you live in two countries. Sometimes you are here, the other period you are in Dubai, and they're asking, is it for medical tourism? Is that the Dubai attraction? What will you do to invest in education in Nigeria, invest, in health as leader of the Nigerian government if you win? If you can clarify this fixation with Dubai.
There is no fixation by Dubai, it's just the handiwork of the media. Yes, I was in Dubai for a stretch during the COVID, and I used the period to do, my master's. That's the longest time I stayed in Dubai. Otherwise, I have never stayed in Dubai for more than 1 month. So it is the fixation or creation of the media, and many political opponents who keep on talking about Dubai, and so on and so forth. And of course, you must have known that I have invested heavily in education simply because of my passion and believe in education, in the private sector. I believe you also need the private sector in both education and in health. Today, you live in Lagos, you know that most of the health care facilities available to Lagosians are provided by the private sector, not by the public sector. How many people go to government hospitals or clinics or health centers in Lagos? And recall also that today, most of our universities are private sector universities. They don't go on strike. You don't hear them go on strike. You don't hear anything. The only places where you have strikes are the public universities. And this is simply because the government does not provide enough resources for what is there to maintain a university. Just make sure that you equip the university and also you pay the teachers regularly. I give you a story. One day I was going around my university and I went to the science lab. And I found a science assistant, lab assistant rather, and he was wearing the uniform. And I asked him from where is he? He said from the Southwest. I said, what did he study? He said he studied, was it one of the sciences, chemistry or something like that. And he was wearing a lab uniform. I said, but why are you working here? He said, well, he finished his science degree without seeing a lab in one of the Southwestern universities. And that's why he came here to do his NYSC. What he is seeing, he has not seen them until he finished his course. It's just like the foremost saying, what people were saying, that we have graduates of computer who have not seen computers, in the early days, of the computers. So I think it's the issue of investing and make sure those investments really reach where they are supposed to reach. When I set up my university, for the first 5 years, I was giving every student a free computer. After 5 years, I now said, okay, one of the conditions of your admission when you are coming, you must come with your own computer. And this is the type of computer we want. And today, we are the most technologically driven university in the country. Why I'm telling you this is even Google itself has recognized us and flew all the way from the United States to come and visit our university. Because they were trying to find out who are the most countries in Africa that have the highest penetration of internet. They found that Egypt, in North Africa, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. And they were trying to find where in Nigeria is this concentration of this internet penetration. And then they did not find it in Lagos, they didn't find it in Abuja, they didn't find it in Port Harcourt. According to Google, they said they found it in a remote northeastern part of the country. And they said that was a Nigerian scam. And they flew all the way from the United States to Lagos, Abuja. From Abuja, they went to Yola, only to find a sprawling university that is technologically driven in every aspect of our life. They couldn't believe it. They gave us a grant, and they signed an agreement with us, and they left. So it depends on the vision of the leadership. If, you elect an analog leadership, expect an analog management of whatever aspect of your national life, whether it is education, whether it is economy, and so on and so forth. You can't do that with me, my friend. If you are talking about business, I started business even when I was a civil servant. If you are talking of education, I have a passion for it, I am in it. If you are talking about agriculture and industry, I have invested in agriculture and I have industries. What are you going to tell me about?
Right. Constitutional reform is a legislative exercise, but the executive wields great influence. How would you use yours to devolve powers and achieve federalism in the areas of resource control and security?
I will do it, let me tell you this. Because I will summon the governors, I will tell them these are the reforms I want, these are the powers I want devolved to the states, so they should not go and stop their state assemblies from passing constitutional amendments. And I want to see a very, very lean federal government.
Okay, let's talk again about your manifesto, in which you talked about a special presidential welfare initiative for security personnel in the country. Earlier on, you talked about how we don't have enough policemen, how security agents are overstretched. You talked about your support for state police. But in terms of welfare, what will be the content of that initiative?
What I mean about the welfare, before it was traditionally, you see, barracks accommodation being provided for our security agencies. You don't see anymore. You see allowances being paid to them, they are not being paid to them. Even where they lose their lives, their families are not looked after, are not catered for. So there are a number of welfare packages that are currently not being provided to our security agencies, who sometimes had to make supreme sacrifices for us, to have peace in our homes and also on the streets and as well as in our country. So these are some of the special presidential, incentives that I want to introduce into the armed forces and also the security agencies. My intention is really to set up a very, very high-powered committee to look into ways and how we can do that and achieve that without any further delay.
Right. Earlier on, you referred to wanting a lean federal government. We all know the issues with corruption, bureaucracy, and waste, or what have you. How exactly will you trim the fat? Can you give us more details?
I want to rationalize the agencies of the federal government. There are just too many, and they are doing duplicating the responsibilities. Just too many, of them. I want to rationalize them, definitely. And also I want to introduce e-government. Once you introduce e-government, you know how much you are going to eliminate in terms of contact and so on and so forth. I know it's not popular, but I will do it.
Well, let me ask you about INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission. There's been so much talk about the new Electoral Act 2022 and innovations in that regard. In fact, some people attribute the PDP's victory in the Osun governorship election because of reforms, electoral reforms. How much faith do you have in INEC and the new electoral framework?
So far, so good. So far, so good. INEC has done well so far. Of course, these are off-season, elections, so they are isolated. So it is much, much easier to conduct very, very free, credible elections because they are off-season elections and they are isolated. Let's see what happens when we have nationwide elections. But if anything is to go by from the off-season elections we have seen, then we should expect a better improvement, on the performance of INEC.
We certainly hope so. Does Nigeria have a debt problem or a revenue problem?
Both.
How do you plan to tackle both problems?
This issue of debt problem, of course, there are a number of ways we can approach it. We will approach it either through restructuring. Unfortunately, we don't have any more scheme for debt forgiveness. I'm actually reading a paper on it now, on the issue of debt and also revenue. But for sure, we have to deal with these two issues because we are going to inherit a government that is deeply indebted and that has also not expanded, the revenue base as such. So debt and revenue are very, very, very key.
Okay, let's go back to the issue of your choice of a running mate. How much is Governor Ifeanyi Okowa of Delta State bringing to the table? And if former Governor Peter Obi did not leave the PDP, will you have chosen him a second time as your running mate, considering how he has gained considerable momentum, although you say that social media but there's something called the obedient movement that is gaining very serious momentum. In your private moments, do you feel sometimes, oh, maybe I should have invited Peter Obi back? But basically, how much is Ifeanyi Okowa bringing to the table?
Now, first of all, this is a guy that is very brilliant, very well educated. He started political career from local government to a commissioner, from a commissioner to a senator, from a senator to a governor. So in terms of all political parameters, he really has got the experience. And experience matters quite a lot. As I announced in my statement, I am seeking for a vice president who from day one can be a president. So he is calm. He has acquired a lot of experience. He is intellectually brilliant. So these are some of the reasons why I picked him.
So you don't miss Peter Obi?
Well, they are two different, people. They are two different people. Not that I don't miss Peter Obi, but unfortunately, Peter did not consult me. We were going on and on and on. Then suddenly I heard he has announced to be in the Labour. I think he informed me 3 days after he declared for Labour. So he did not even consult me.
All right, you just outlined for us some of the sectors that you're involved with business-wise. Yet the perception lingers in some minds of corruption where you are concerned. Can you dispel that perception?
I have challenged the people of this country over and over and over again. If you have got any corruption case against me, please bring it up. Please bring it up. Nobody has come up with any corruption. Yes, I was accused of corruption just like any other person else in public office. And I was investigated and nothing was found. So what else do you want me to do?
Well, there are many who will admit readily, yes, that you're not being convicted in the court of law on the basis of charges.
But is there a way then you judge an individual?
No, the question that they are asking, those who raise the question, they say, well, you are considered one of the wealthiest Nigerians. They want to know, where is that wealth coming from, considering the fact that you were a public officer, and they say, how did you become so wealthy?
Unfortunately, the fact that you are a public officer does not stop you from engaging in business. I was telling somebody, the very first day I resumed duty at Idiroko border station, I was not even married. What I realized was that one of the most lucrative business ventures then was buying a Peugeot 404, putting bench at the back and conveying passengers between Lagos and Cotonou or Ajashe, Port Novo. And as a young officer, I walked into the ACOA in Apapa. I signed a form for hire purchase, and I took about 5 of them. And I came back to Idiroko, distributed them to drivers, and they were ferrying passengers between Lagos and Port Novo, and I was making my money. So I have been doing business from day one.
Okay. But if you were a public officer and you were doing business,
There is no conflict of interest. The fact that you are a public officer doesn't stop you from engaging in legitimate business. There is no law which says that you cannot engage in legitimate business because you are a public officer. No law. Well, tell me the law.
in 2019, you went to Ota. You were going to consult with your former boss, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. But this time around, nobody has seen you going to Ota or going to Abeokuta. Do you really have Chief Olusegun Obasanjo's blessing this time around? Have you been talking to him?
I've been talking to him.
Okay.
I've been talking to him. The only thing is that I didn't go after I emerged as a candidate of the PDP. I didn't go to him, that's all.
Okay. But do you have his support or you don't need his support?
Why would I not need his support? He was my former boss. Why would I not need his support? Of course I would need his support.
Do you have it?
I assume I have it.
You are not sure.
Why not? I don't think he has a better person to support than myself because I have his legacy to continue.
Well, on that note, we would like to thank you very much. Well, you say we should not call you Alhaji. I think it would be correct to call you Chief Atiku Abubakar. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for speaking to Arise News.
Thank you very much
indeed.
Yeah, most welcome.
Well, that's the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, discussing his plans for Nigeria.
Brother, Mr. Peter Obi.
Structures.
Obi has reacted to the notion that his presidential ambition might just be dead on arrival for his lack of political structure. Speaking in Makurdi, the Benue state capital, after a closed-door session with the governor of the state, Mr. Obi dismissed the claim as false, saying the over 100 million people living below the poverty line are his strong structure. On his part, Governor Samuel Otom says Mr. Obi possesses an impeccable credential fit for the highest office in the land.
For me, it's just a courtesy call on somebody I consider a brother and the governor of Benue State. It's just a courtesy call, private courtesy call. I've said it before when people talk about structure. That my structure are the 100 million Nigerians living in poverty, 35 million young people unemployed, those people who are finding it difficult to live, the people. Nigerians are today spending over 100% of their money on feeding. That are my structures. And above all, I have the most important structure, the Almighty God.
First of all, to
Obi has reacted to the notion that his presidential ambition might just be dead on arrival for his lack of political structure. Speaking in Makurdi, the Benue state capital, after a closed-door session with the governor of the state, Mr. Obi dismissed the claim as false, saying the over 100 million people living below the poverty line are his strong structure. On his part, Governor Samuel Otom says Mr. Obi possesses an impeccable credential fit for the highest office in the land.
For me, it's just a courtesy call on somebody I consider a brother and the governor of Benue State. It's just a courtesy call, private courtesy call. I've said it before when people talk about structure. That my structure are the 100 million Nigerians living in poverty, 35 million young people unemployed, those people who are finding it difficult to live, the people. Nigerians are today spending over 100% of their money on feeding. That are my structures. And above all, I have the most important structure, the Almighty God.
First of all, to welcome my brother, Mr. Peter Obi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party, and to commend him for paying this courtesy call, and also to formally let me know of his intention to contest the presidency in 2023. I commend him, and where we are today, I've always said we must look beyond politics, and we must work towards a joint working together to ensure that we rescue Nigeria and rebuild it. And I think that Peter Obi's credentials are very clear, and everybody knows. But I appreciate him. He knows that I am a very big stakeholder in PDP, but he found time to visit me. And he's been going around. And so this is commendable, and I appreciate him. And like I always say, John 3:27, a man can receive nothing except is given to him from above. So if God decides that it is him, nobody can stop it. If God decides that it is somebody else, nobody can also stop it. So this is a very welcome development, and I believe that he will reach out to even the other presidential candidates of various political parties in the PDP, in the APC, and NNPP. I believe that he should be able to reach out to them, to sit down with them, analyze the Nigerian situation, and see if he can convince them to even step down for him, because there is provision. If they do that, that can work. So, but let us be seen as putting Nigeria first. That is what is most important. And I think so far, I commend his effort, and I welcome him and appreciate him for paying this visit. And God bless him.